Okay, what we're going to do here is talk about every single epic in the game. That is in every single faction, and we're going to be starting right here from Holy Light Empire. We're going to go through their kits. We're going to talk about which ones I like and why, which ones I don't like and why. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the Holy Light Empire. Now, we're going to start with William. Now, if you didn't know, William's one of the best epics in the entire game. There's a bunch of reasons. The basic abilities of all team members deal 50% more damage. It goes up to 80% when he is ascended. So that is pretty good, just to do 50% more off the basic. But it pairs very well with his special ability, which grants a stack of counterattack to all team members and applies defense up to the main target for 3 turns. So effectively what this does is make it where when somebody takes an instance of damage, the person who has the counterattack stack will recounter and hit the other person back with their basic ability, which you can see why that pairs very well with the traits here. Now, moving on to the basic, deals 50% damage to an enemy and launches a joint attack with a random ally. This is very good. It also pairs well, like, once again, with his counterattack as well. Now, if we're going to be moving here to his A3, deal 100% damage to all enemies with an 80% chance to apply defense down for 2 turns. This does not book to 100% chance. It stays at 80%. Goes down to a 4-turn cooldown and will help you nuke through waves. And this is also a pretty good thing for the Ash Magistrate dungeon, as he is blue affinity, so he's the correct affinity for that, so you can get AoE defense down, as well as counterattack and all that goodies to help you through the Ash Magistrate. Very good hero, one of the best heroes in the game. Moving on to Thomas. I think Thomas is alright due to the way he counterattacks. If you look here, when his health is above 50% attack, attacks have a 15% chance to apply stun. When health is below 50%, instead he deals max true damage, and the stats go up a little bit here when the enemy's max health goes up to 5% on the Ascended. Now, if you look at the basic here, 100% damage, 50% chance to remove a positive effect, but the passive's pretty cool, which is an ability you use, just happens. An enemy attacks an ally, there's a 50% chance to perform a counterattack that deals 100% damage. Okay, so for that reason, pretty good. Doesn't counterattack with his basic, so you're not getting the removing positive effects off the counter, but he does do 100% damage. So imagine him paired with William or something. You can imagine there's a lot of attacks that happen over and over and over again. Now, moving on here. The ultimate applies defense down 2 to an enemy for 2 turns and then deals 200% damage. So you get a nuke directly after applying the defense down 2. He's all right. I think he's kind of in the middle. Now, moving on here, the Edicris. Edicris is somebody that is really difficult to deal with if he's the last guy alive. Not because he's got mechanics for being the last guy alive, because if you look here, 120% damage to all enemies grants invincible to this character for 1 turn, okay? So when he has, it's a turn invincible, not a stack, so when he uses this move, then 1 whole turn you can't hurt him, basically. He goes back, he gets another hit. I've got stuck on this guy before, and then if you're not able to kill him between the time, well, let me show you here. Look at his other move. So removes all negative effect from this character, heals 20% of max health, and grants a bonus turn. So he can effectively do the ultimate. You can't hurt him. It's his turn. Any negative effects you had on him, he removes those, gets another turn, reduces the ultimate cooldown by 1 again, and also heals them. So you can see very quickly where he can become a problem. On his basic, 80% damage to an enemy, 100% chance to remove a positive effect, 30% chance to launch a bonus attack to all enemies. And the passive is Holy Protection, which basically is, think of it like attack up and defense up. Okay, it's his version of that. And it happens if no damage was taken in the previous turn, then he gets Holy Punishment, which Holy Punishment increases the damage. Otherwise, if he is taking damage, then he gets Holy Protection. So the Holy Protection will combine basically with the fact you're getting the invincibles and you're getting the remove negative effects, etc., etc., etc. So what happens is he's invincible, he takes no damage. The next turn, because he took no damage, he gets greatly reduced damage from the Holy Protection. So then you do damage to him, but then he heals himself, gets the bonus turn, goes back into the ultimate, etc. So it's kind of an annoying way of dealing with him. I think he's quite good, but will probably be better as gear gets better. Now, moving on to Jacob here. I think Jacob's all right. Look at the passive, grants stealth at the start of the battle, which will be permanent if he's ascended, so that's kind of okay. 80% damage to an enemy, 100% chance to apply Intrigue. So Intrigue has a max of 20 stacks, and it effectively removes flat defense. So it's flat defense, not a percentage of defense. So he removes 100 flat defense, or excuse me, 400 max defense at max level. Okay, you can see his base stats 468, so you get an idea of how much that is. The special randomly selects 1 ally at the start of every round. Every time that ally uses a basic ability, this character launches a joint attack with their own basic ability. So you can see how the light people kind of all pair with these, like, you're sort of attacking with counterattacks, and an ally joins in and all that with William, etc. So you can kind of see how it works. Now his ultimate, take a look, spends all rage to enter a state of madness, grants a bonus turn for every one rage spent, exits the madness state after all bonus turns are used up. So you convert basically your rage continually into extra turn, extra turn, extra turn, extra turn. Pair that with the fact of like the bonus attacks, for instance, from some of the other epics, he can be quite good. And that is going to wrap up the Holy Light Empire epics. And we're going to move into Criesis. Now, 4 epics in here. The first one's going to be Magnar. He's interesting. He's kind of RNG because he has to attack like again and again, basically. Look at the passive. When using this ability, 30% chance to use it twice. Health is below 50%. Chances increase to 70%, okay? Now, if he's ascended, if it fails to trigger, then its ability's cooldown is reduced by 1, which is pretty good also. Now, the basic attack here, if you see, does damage. It also does defense down. If they already have defense down, it applies again. So you can see it goes, basically does the lower version, and then you get the higher version off the basic if you get the RNG. That's one of the only guys that got defense down 2 off basic. Here you go. Grants attack up and shield with a strength equal to 150% of attack for 2 turns. Grants a bonus turn if affected by attack up. So this shield's actually huge. 150% attack is kind of nuts. Moving on here to the ultimate, you can obviously see how he gets another turn to kind of reset it. 150% damage here to an enemy with a 50% chance to apply stun for 1 turn. If the target is affected by stun for 1 turns, or if the target's affected by stun, then grants 100% attack and a bonus attack. So basically, he stuns. If it RNGs again, he attacks again, does more damage, okay? Pretty simple. So you can understand the RNG aspect of it, and that is basically how he works. He's kind of nuts. I actually really like him, to be honest, and I think he might be used later on because of his basic. Now, this guy is one of the best epics in the game, and it's primarily because of his passive. I think it's going to be good against clan boss tanking. When an ally whose health is below 50% takes single target damage, their damage is reduced to 0, and this character receives 50% of the original damage, can only trigger 1 time per round or 2 times per round if he is ascended. And the 2 times per round is important because every round, the boss will attack the off-affinity person, and that off-affinity person will get hit twice. So if you have this, you can use an off-affinity tank and have them effectively take 0 damage during the portions where he's punching, which will work with an unkillable comp, who I've talked about previously, and I will bring up in the future video on how to keep basically immune to all damage in the clan boss, or I should say the guild battle, okay? Now moving on to the basic attack, he does attack down. The other one here does taunt to all enemies, and his third attack, damage to all enemies, defense up to all team members. So he's effectively sort of a supportive tank straight out of WoW. Very good. Now, Urzags, I think, is trash. Not going to talk about him very long. 1% extra damage, basically for every health lost by him. 100% damage to an enemy. Chance to apply defense down. If he's below 50%, he applies defense down for 2 turns instead of 1. 100% damage to all enemies. Chance of bleeding. And then 108% damage plus 50% bonus under 50% health, which is 230% damage. Execute, which is one of the highest executes. Don't like him, think he's trash. Now, Auric, I think, is actually pretty good. If you look at this here, when attacking, 30% chance to combo and deal 30% damage to all enemies, crit rate increased to 100% on that combo. It's badly worded. Now, it also says 50% damage to all enemies when ascended. Now, keep on here. The basic attack applies defense down, 30% chance to trigger increase to 100% upon critical strike. Basically, how this works is it's badly worded. When you get 100% crit rate and you crit, these passives happen. So the combo will happen on crit. The extra chance here will happen on crit. 150% damage to an enemy recovers 50% of the damage dealt, pretty self-explanatory. Then the ultimate here removes all positive effects from a target, then deals 200% damage. Damage from this attack scales with the target's max health. Very important for bosses as well. I think he's one of the better red nukers against bosses in particular, and I like him a lot. He's also probably going to be pretty good against the Holy Dungeon. Now, moving on to the next epic hero, which is going to be in the next faction, is Lazir. They have 5. Hugh. Now, Hugh is a PvP character, but he's also a synthesis character that you're going to need to bring up to legendary, so be careful not to ascend too many of them. Whenever an enemy with speed lower than this character attacks, 50% chance for him to counter. It's 100% chance when ascended. Okay, keep that in mind. Basic attack, 70% damage. Damage scales with his speed, so faster he is, the better, which also obviously synergizes with his passive. 100% damage to all enemies with a chance to apply speed down, 75% chance. And then the ultimate's 200% damage to an enemy. If the speed is lower than this character's speed, ignores 50% of the enemy's defense. This is the exact same ratio as Lydia, for instance, which Lydia actually does very big damage with this in the 50% ignored defense. So very good hero, also used for the synergy, or the synthesis, I should say, so be careful by maxing him too much. Now, Vance is okay. I think he's healthily in the middle. If you look at the passive here, ignores all the target's positive effects when attacking. That seems kind of okay. Increases by 20% if they have positive effect when he's ascended. Now, basic here is attack down, which is just kind of nice, not really a big deal. 100% damage to an enemy, duplicates all their positive effects onto this character. That is pretty good, okay? Moving on to the ultimate, 200% damage to an enemy. Damage increases by 20% for every positive effect on the enemy. So if somebody has a bunch of heal over times or something like that, you could effectively nuke him. I don't like him that much, but he does have decent base speed. Now, Kyle, speaking of base speed, is amazing because he has 146 base speed, which is very fast. I want to talk about his passive, which attacks on this character reduce the cooldown of their ultimate by 1 turn, can only be triggered once per round, okay? And it will go down to once per turn when ascended. Now, why is that so important? Because his ultimate's amazing. Shape shifts into the target enemy for 2 turns. Immediately grants 1 bonus turn, plus another turn at the end of the round. The shape shift does not work against bosses or elite units. Elite units is a PvE thing, so this is a PvP guy. He's fast enough, they'll go first, you'll shape shift into their wind strikes or something, then boost your team. That's basically how this guy works. He has higher base speed than other people, so you use him as a counter in PvP. He's actually very good for that reason. His passive makes it where he basically always counterattacks. He silences on the counterattack a portion of the time, then the basic attack applies attack down as well. So you're basically just kind of being an annoying support person, but then when you use your ultimate, you duplicate their best hero. Very good. Scarlet is somebody that is okay in PvE and stacks bleeds. If you look here, the wolf attacks with her. She gets this wolf and it attacks and it constantly applies bleed, which is pretty good. The basic attack, if you look here, applies bleed as well. The passive of the wolf here is any attack against an enemy affected by bleeding triggers a bonus wolf attack. So she's all about bleed, which is further confirmed when you go the ultimate and you see 150% total damage to an enemy in a 3 prolonged attack, each strike of which has either 100%, 50%, or 100% or 30% chance to apply bleeding for 2 turns. Summons 1 wolf if no wolves are present. So basically a whole bunch of bleeds, okay? That's what she does. She's a bleeder. Now, moving on to Marion Shadowblood, very good dark, a dark sort of percentage health type of hero. If you look here, grants this character a 30% chance to launch a joint attack alongside the attack of any ally. So she pairs well with William, for instance. Look at the basic attack here. Deals 50% damage to an enemy plus true damage equal to 3% of the target's max health. So very good, because what you want to do is use it where she pairs plus like the William counterattack and she's shredding basically max HP. The A2 here removes all negative effects, deals 100% damage to an enemy after healing 30% of the max health. Very good. Look at this, 100% damage to all enemies, plus true damage equal to 8% of the target's max health. Applies Unholy Redemption to this character for 2 turns, which is 50% damage reduction and 40% lifesteal. I think she's a very good hero, but I think she's one of those heroes that probably needs the Ascension, trigger scales with this character's speed, so that way you get a higher chance to join in with her passive, okay? So there is the normal version, and now moving on, we are on to the next one, which is Soul Plunderers. We're about halfway through, and they only have 2 epics. So Santis is a poisoner. Show you the ultimate first. It applies poisons in AoE, prolongs the duration of poison effects on enemy by a turn, which will pair very good with the poison people like Ganglio. 150% damage to an enemy, duplicates all poison effects affecting them onto another random enemy. 80% damage to an enemy and applies poison for 2 turns on the basic, and then the passive attacks against the enemy affected by poison have 50% chance to apply an additional poison for 2 turns, okay? So she's the poison epic, basically. She's also a synthesis person, so be careful about leveling her too much. You're going to need to synthesize somebody if you're going for the legendaries, but I think she's a PvE poison, long-term grinder type of person. Usually like Ganglio, her, and maybe Gajar, whatever his name is, maybe Gerberg or whatever his name is. A bunch of poison type of people, and that is probably where I would be putting her. Now, the next epic, Andre, is actually very good because he can do very high damage due to the way his ultimate works. If you look here, 250% damage to an enemy, plus grants 2+ rage, 1+ rage per critical strike, okay? And the rage, if you look at the passive here, if the character has rage, 30% crit damage. If not, then attacks have 50% chance to reduce their ultimate ability. So it's basically about you stack the rage, use the alt, big crit, stack the rage, do the alt, big crit. Look at the basic here, 8% damage to an enemy if this character has rage, and this attack expends 1 rage to deal double damage, so 160%. If you look here, counters any attempt to inflict negative effect with a total dispel, granting 2 rage. So he also can't have negative effects too. Amazing. I think this hero is very, very, very good and hits very, very, very hard. Okay, probably slept on a little bit, and I believe he's another, if I remember correctly, he is another synthesis person. Now, moving on to the epics here, we're in the woodlands, and there's 5 epics here. There is Helmar. Another bleeder. If you look at the passive here, 20% chance to grant a bonus attack with this character's special ability, goes up to 50% when ascended. The basic attack has a 100% chance of applying bleeding. Then what's the special for the passive? 50% damage to an enemy implies bleeding for 2 turns. If the enemy is already affected by bleeding, it implies an extra stack of bleeding. So more bleeding stacks with the basic. And if you read the basic one more time, when ascended, 50% chance to grant a bonus attack with this character's special ability. Okay, so 50% happens in basically every other move. So if you go here, the ultimate, 150% damage to an enemy, and detonates the bleeding effects, which is where you're probably going to be interested in people like Scarlet. So if you have a lot of these bleeder type of epics, consider Helmar. He is another synthesis, so be careful, but he is a detonator for that. Moving on to Kane, he's the hero everyone starts with, so we're not going to go on very much, but basically, he can apply stun. He actually does a pretty good amount of damage with it. He has a defense down 2, which is fairly rare. His basic attack here is a chance of removing positive effects, and then, of course, the passive absorbs 15% of damage taken by an ally if he is at the start of turn with less than 50% health. They absorb 50% less damage, which goes to 100% less damage when ascended, which is literally all of the damage, so that can be all right. Arendel's a logging guy. He's basically pure crit, pure damage. I'm not actually a big fan of him. He has defense down on the basic. When someone else crits, then he uses this ability to launch a bonus attack, so you can kind of pair him with people like William and all that if you want a whole bunch of people to use bonus attack over and over and over again. Expands all rage, 150% damage to an enemy, damage increased by 5% per rage. Don't like him. I think Andre's better. Okay, moving on. Antina is interesting because of the unicorn effect here. If you look at the basic, it grants Unicorn Blessing at the start of the battle, applies Unicorn Blessing at the start of every round, okay, when ascended, however. Unicorn's Blessing as attacks inflict 30% more damage, reduces attack damage taken by 30%. That's just overall just great. 200% damage to an enemy. If he has Unicorn's Blessing, then you get a bonus turn, reduces this down to 3 turns, basically. So because of that, you can do the Unicorn's Blessing into the A2, which is 150% damage, grants Unicorn Blessing. So you can go Blessing into Blessing into Blessing. And if they has a Blessing on the basic, then gets a bonus basic against the person. Basically, it does it twice. Don't like her, but she can hit hard. Lunar Melissa, I think, is very good, particularly because of her ultimate. If you look here, she taunts everybody on her ultimate. Okay, it applies taunt. It doesn't say that as a chance to. It just does it for 1 turn and has a chance to do it for 2 turns. Now, the way the basic works is her ultimate ability gets reduced by 2 turns when ascended every time somebody on your team dies, okay? Which means that she taunts some people on your team die, then you taunt them again, and then the idea is because they died, maybe you resurrected them and they're low HP or something, so you have the taunt again. People like Mathasia will pair well with her, but also people like Balbereth, who like res themselves, will pair well too, because him dying and then resing himself to get the kill will help re-trigger the passive of the AoE taunt. I think she's mostly a PvP person, but the problem with the PvP is her speed's so low, so it's kind of counterintuitive there. I'm yet to figuring out where I think she's going to fit in 100%, but I think I like her. Moving over to Melissa, this is the standard version of her. This is basically just a DPS version of Melissa. I actually don't think she's too hyped, to be honest. It's just kind of a bunch of damage, and if she has no positive effects, then you do more damage and removes positive effects. I don't like her, again, because I think she's mostly damage, and I think there's just better damage heroes. Virgo, one of the best heroes in the entire game. Virgo himself here, well, if you look at his base speed, it's 123, which is not bad, okay? It's not like some of the other heroes like Kyle, but it's not bad. If you look at the passive, it's okay. Grants 20% chance to apply Arcane Sanction, goes up to 40% if he's ascended. This character will convert 4 rage at the end of the turn into a bonus turn, okay? Well, what's Sanction do? Takes damage equal to 10% of their max health and suffers silence for 1 turn if they cast any ability with a cooldown. So that affects it. But the major reason people like him is he does AoE silence and grants 2 rage. The rage doesn't really matter as much. It's AoE silence. So it's 100% silence. He just does it. You make him go first, silence everyone. Now they can only use their basic abilities. His A2 does 100% damage to all enemies plus bonus damage if the target is affected. And this basic here removes a positive effect. So he's also good in things like the light dungeon. He's overall a good hero. He's good for stripping buffs. He's good for silencing and kind of controlling fights. And obviously, he's a cast and rip off. His animations in game are literally Cassidon's animations. He does the RE combo where he R's in and then does the E. Just so you know, if you played League of Legends, this is a rip off hero. Now, moving on here, Windstrex, maybe the best epic in the game, right next to Zol. Zatlux, I should say. So if you look here, 128 base speed, so she goes first quite often. If you look at the ultimate here, speed up and attack up to all team members, so you can figure out why she'd be good in PvP, makes your team go first. This move here resets the ally's ultimate ability, which makes her also good in places like guild battles, because if you have people that their ultimates like 90% of your damage on your team, you just reset the ultimates over and over. And the reason it resets over and over is when she's ascended, 100% chance to reduce its basic cooldown time by 1 turn when she uses an ability, okay? So she can basically use this one, have it reduced to 3 turns, use this one, have it be reduced to 3 turns, and then be able to constantly spam these over and over and over again. Also, she's quite fast, like I was saying, just a good basic hero. The basic also applies speed down. Overall, she's the apothecary of this game and is overall very solid. Moving on, Celestial Kane, one of the people building inside of the unkillable comp I'm working on. He effectively allows invincibles for a turn, not a stack, so this will just continually make your entire team invincible on his ultimate until damage that happens to you is outside of their turn, basically. So if he does, there's 2 stacks of invincible, is what I'm trying to explain. There's a Mary which does invincible stack, so it's 1 instance of damage. So if you get hit, it removes it, and then if they have a bonus turn they hit, you actually apply damage. Whereas invincible, if they get hit and then they get a bonus turn, they hit you again, you're still invincible. It's just until the person who's invincible takes a turn. So it's like kind of a better version of it, but they don't stack, for instance, like Mary's unkillable does stack. Now the basic here is just a taunt, and then this the special is a taunt, and the basic basically heals himself, as well as does 2 to 6 hits, and the passive is very good, which removes negative effects from team members every time he gets hit. Removes 1 negative effect from all team members when this character is attacked. Very good. Okay, very good. It's a Doom Priest kind of passive. Like this hero, very solid top tier type of champion. Now we're moving on here. We don't have too many of these left. We're moving on to the Titan Icelands. They have 5 as well. I'm going to move through these guys kind of quickly because I have some feelings about these guys. Rickard, I think, is interesting because of the damage reduction. It kind of all comes down to he does total max health. You buff this up and you just get him with as much HP as possible. He's pretty high base health. You just make him do true damage to as many people as possible. He removes all effects, deals 100% damage, and restores his health. And you can see here he does attack down. Just a survival guy, basically. And so I find him a little boring, but I think the true damage is quite good. Moving on to Lord Wreck here. He's another fusion guy, or synthesis, I should say. Removes all negative effects, restores his health every turn, so he could be good as like a solo carry because he does attack down as well. If you look at the passive, removes all controlling effects from this character. When affected by control effects, 100% chance to use an ultimate ability to counterattack, which is like a whirlwind type of move. So if you see here, he does damage to all enemies, removes positive effects from the target. So effectively strips positive effects from the enemy with his ultimate, which counters when negative effects apply on him. So if you apply negative to him, you basically screw over your team. That's sort of the way he works. He's okay. He's mostly for the synthesis. Hasso is sort of another one of these dwarfs. If you look at the ultimate here, 120% damage to an enemy, applies crit rate down to the target. Damage scales with the amount of this character's max health. So we have another one of these max health heroes. Heals all allies, team members 20% of max health, applies crit rate resistance up to the targets, launches 2 strikes, dealing 100% damage to an enemy. Each strike has a chance to apply ignite. So he's kind of a tanky type of guy because he grants a shield with 30% of max health upon taking a critical strike, 3 cooldown, and you just kind of tank it out and attack down. Again, I don't find these guys particularly interesting myself. This guy's interesting because he stacks max health with his ultimate ability, but he is used in the synthesis. So I think, how to put it, I think this guy's probably going to be used for synthesis mostly. The stacking max health is very good though, because it can stack 5 times and gives you 15% bonus max health. So if you can get it off consistently, will give you 75% bonus max health, which I could be seeing quite good on the guild battles in order to survive longer. Grants a team-wide defense bonus equal to 10% of his rating. Defense rating goes up to 20% of his defense rating when ascended, so I could see that being good again for the guild battles. Basic attack, 50% damage to an enemy, chance to reduce the cooldown of his ultimate ability. So again, you're stacking health quicker. And if you look at his special, it does a taunt and scales with his defense. So you can build him tanky, does more damage, has very high base health, and stacks health for people. Basically, a support type of champion, and I can see why he would make sense with the other dwarves. Moving on to Mila, she is a AoE freezer. If you look at the ultimate, 100% damage to all enemies, damage scales with the number of negative effects affecting this character, meaning herself, okay? If you look here, 100% damage to an enemy. If the enemy is affected by a negative effect, grants shield to this character for 2 turns. And then the basic, 80% damage to an enemy, 50% chance to apply defense down. Now, where it's cool is a passive. Attacks have 50% chance when ascended to apply frozen to the target for 1 turn, plus 15% per negative effect on the target. Now, after reading all this, I'm wondering if they actually does scale with negative effects on the other enemy instead of on this character, because all the other moves scale off the other people, but maybe that is the way it works. She also has hair like mine, so you gotta love her. Okay, she's all right because of the freezes. Now, there is just a couple more factions. We have the free cities. There is 6 here. Nathalia is very good. The reason is every positive effect this character has, their abilities affect one extra enemy and damage increased by 10%. Moving on. 100% damage to an enemy and grants random stats up to this character for 1 turn. Next move, applies attack up and immune for 2 turns if this character is buffed by a positive effect at the start of their turn. So basically, you get somebody else to buff her, then she gets more buffs on herself. Now, if you're looking here, 100% 80 damage to an enemy. If the enemy is killed, this ability cooldown is reset. Okay, now, basically, this will nuke people pretty hard. Even harder if you have a lot of positive effects. So you want to buff her up, have this nuke somebody and reset, and basically you're nuking with all the positive effects. So she works pretty well with people that are other supports. So it allows you to do DPS have support heroes. Moving on to Harbreg here, 6 rage, 145% damage to an enemy. I really don't like this guy. Grants 2 rage on that move. Spends 2 rage to deal 50% damage to an enemy. The passive grants rage at the end of the turn. Any amount of rage over 5 grants this character plus 100% damage bonus. Max rage, grants 9 rage at the start of the battle. I don't like this because even though how to put it, even though this guy gets a 400% damage bonus, it takes so much setup to have something happen, and during the time to have it to work, you could have just done something with a different hero. Borden is interesting because he gets a bonus turn of 50%. So let me show you here. Grants an ultimate ability cooldown reset and a medium bonus turn once the enemy's health falls below 50%. Ability may be only triggered 2 times per battle. So you hit somebody, you trigger their health below 50%. If you have Sierra or something that does an AoE, hits everybody, and then this guy cuts in and does a 50% damage too. With his ultimate, if you look at the ultimate here, 200% damage to an enemy. Damage scales with the amount of health lost by the enemy. This ability ignores the target's invincible, death immunity, and guard effects. So, just going to happen. Basically, there's also your counter for 10-8 when it comes to certain nick. Moving on to A2, damage to all enemies, and he stealths himself. The basic attack, random stance down for 2 turns. Pretty good because you can get attack down, defense down, speed up, speed down and crit rate down. So you can get basically all of them. Now moving on here, we have Jonathan, who I don't like at all, even though people think he's okay. 1+ rage per attack or upon taking valid hit. Regenerates 10% of max health at the start of the turn if damaged on the previous turn. Goes up to 15%. So it basically regenerates every turn. 100% damage to an enemy with a chance of silence on the basic. Grants a bonus turn at the end of the round, as well as attack up and damage reduction for 2 turns. And if you look here, removes negative effects, expands all rage. 100% damage to all enemies. Amount of damage does attack scale with the amount of health lost by targets and rage expended. So kind of scales there. I just don't think he does enough as an epic. Personally, not interesting. Really like the jar though. If you read the passive, applies corrosion venom to all enemies currently affected by the poison. Grants a 20% chance of launching a bonus attack with unhealable against enemies affected by poison. Okay. However, if you look at corrosion venom, when poisoned, the damage this character deals will be reduced by 10%. So he reduces their damage as well. Okay. Stops him from healing. Good against bosses. Okay. Goes up to 30% chance here when you get him ascended. Now, the basic, 100% damage to an enemy, 30% chance of applying poison and focus down. Okay, very good. 150% damage to an enemy applies poison. That's a 100% chance. It does apply. This attack has 50% chance of dealing 50% poison damage to all enemies, plus poison for 2 turns. So you get splash damage, sort of like Hydressa. The ultimate deals 200% damage to an enemy and detonates all poison effects. So you can see this guy pairs with the poisoners like we talked about, like Santis earlier. Lightwing Zachary is one of my favorite heroes in the game. Is also one of the heroes I've invested most heavily in. He is somebody that I think is slightly misunderstood. So the way his passive works is when he's ascended, he has a 50% chance of every time he gets hit. So basically an instance of damage. So if somebody hits 6 times on their basic, at the end of those 6 hits, he has a 50% chance, okay? That's how it works. When it happens, then he immediately gets the turn and it stacks like ammo in a gun. So if he gets hit by 3 different people, because there's 3 enemies left, and then it goes to his turn, and each one of those, he won the coin flip, he will get 4 turns, because he'll get the 3 bonus turns plus his turn, and he'll go 4 times literally in a row. He's the only hero I've seen that can go in the row over and over and over and over again, much like Hector, and he does it defensively, plus his ultimate does true damage. Like, it ignores defense, and it can't crit, so you build him pure HP and pure attack. And the attack will allow him to basically nuke the bejesus. Like, I can hit like 7,000, 10,000 damage with this guy, and will nuke people that built attack that still can't kill him because he's getting the bonus turns. So effectively, him plus Lydia make it like a really annoying defensive type of comp is my arena comp. Plus his A2 gives him immune, so he can immune himself and give himself attack up, which does benefit his ultimate damage. So you attack up, or excuse me, you immune for 2 turns, then you attack up. Now you have immune and attack up. They hit you, give you a bonus turn, and you ult, and you just kill them. And he is really, 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 really good. Okay, so moving on here to the last but not least, the Dragon Mars, and they have 2. As Rena is a synthesis character, free character counters with 50% damage plus ignite for 2 turns, cooldown 3 rounds, goes to 80% damage on Ascension, applies ignite for 50% chance on the basic, 100% damage to all enemies, attacks deal bonus damage if they have ignite on them. Here you go, 200% damage to an enemy with 50% chance to duplicate ignite to the target to a random enemy. Each strike has a chance to apply ignite. Okay, so it's sort of like poison or bleed. It's the fire version of this type of hero. She's alright, but she's going to be used for synthesis. Now, maybe the best epic in the game right now with the Windstreaks. Zatlux is completely disgusting and everyone's using him. So if you look here, his passive, upon defeating an enemy, resets all of his character's ability cooldowns. When he's ascended, he also gets attack up for 1 turn. Now, his basic attack does 100% damage to an enemy and grants speed up. That's not why people use him. The passive gives him 30% crit rate and 30 precision. Amazing, okay? Look at the ultimate here, though. 200% damage to an enemy plus bonus damage. The fewer the enemies remaining, the higher the bonus damage dealt. If this character kills the target, then launches a bonus attack against the enemy with the lowest health. So he Goomba stomps people in a row. He goes bang, 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 and it's 4 in a row, and he'll just straight up kill them. So if you attack the weakest, he'll kill all the weakest first, then he'll one-shot the boss because he's the only one left, and you get all the bonus damage from it. Plus the attack up that he does himself. Ridiculously strong hero, also has good base attack, so attack percentage works good on them. Very, 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 very good hero, and that's going to wrap up all of the epics in the game. If this was useful for you, or you found information about at least one hero you wanted to know, consider liking this video or subscribing, as more content on this channel will be about Awaken Chaos. Love y'all, and I'll see you live. So I'm going live right now at twitch.tv/darthmicrotransaction to continue pushing and learning about the game.